Hello everyone, my name's Dr. Siva. Hopefully you're all tuned in and watching the webinar. It would be good for me to just know whether you're actually receiving me okay. So if some of you could take a moment to log into the online chat for a second and just let me know if that's working. Whether you're actually receiving me okay. So if some of you could take a moment to log into the online chat for a second and just let me know if that's working. Whether you're actually receiving me okay. So if some of you could... Okay, fantastic. It looks like it is live and kicking. So thanks for joining me today. I'm really excited actually. This is the first time I've done a webinar, but I've been following the webinar series for the past 2-3 weeks, and it's been really good. I found the talks very interesting, and I hope you have as well. And we are planning to continue this throughout the year. So the purpose of that is really to help you stay involved, highlight all of the amazing opportunities available to you, and help you all to get the most out of this fantastic organisation, which that is Medic Mentor. I know that a lot of you have been getting involved and really getting a lot out of it, and the feedback has been incredible, both from the students who are obviously applying as well as the mentors themselves. And we absolutely love being a part of this and mentoring all of you wonderful students. So it's really important that you have to sort of get as involved as you possibly can in order to get the most out of it, because honestly nothing like this existed when I was applying, and I really wish it had, because it would have made a massive difference to me. I know that you're probably tuning in mainly because you might be worried about the grades that you're getting, and this is something that I personally went through as well a few years ago when I applied. And unfortunately, I didn't get the grades that I was expecting. So I am actually talking from personal experience, as well as obviously talking about all the different routes and all the different ways that you can apply to medical school that isn't usually discussed very often, because I think people don't like to talk about it. But I'm going to have a very open and honest conversation with you all through this talk. So if you do have any questions, feel free to post them on the chat down the side. I'm not actually going to answer them during the talk itself, but please bear with me. I will go through all of them in a detailed way at the end of the talk. So I'm only going to talk for about 15 to 20 minutes, and then I'll go through all of your questions on the online chat. Dr. Yates, who's the Director of Education, will also be joining us on the chat a bit later on, and she will be jumping in there to answer your questions. I can see that there are already some questions going up there, so please be patient with me and I will get to it. What I would like to ask you to take a look at is the Medic Mentor reapplication checklist, which is the download that is a link to this talk, and you can access that from your resources tab once you've logged into your Medic Mentor student account. So if you're new to Medic Mentor, that's absolutely fine, welcome. And you can create a free student account on the Medic Mentor website, which is medicmentor.co.uk. Once you've logged in, you'll have an extra menu down the side, and on that there is a resources tab. Once you click on that, you can access a variety of downloads, and the one that I'm talking about is the Medic Mentor reapplication checklist. But I've also got a view of it here, which I'm going to share with you now. So hopefully you can all see that. I'm just going to check, can everybody see that? If you could just post some comments on the chat, that would be very helpful. Can everybody see that? If you could just post some comments on the chat, that would be very helpful. I can see that Dr. Yates has already started answering questions, which is fantastic. Okay, brilliant. So I think the best way to go through this really is to look at it from the perspective of your journey. So, you know, if we take it back a notch to students who are currently at GCSE, worried about your GCSE results this summer, you know, we all know that you need really high grades to get into medical school. And certainly, you know, I would always recommend that you do everything you possibly can to avoid the reapplication scenario. So by that I mean, you know, really study hard, make sure that your revision skills are, or that you've tried a few different techniques and that you've got a revision approach which is working for you. Personally, I found that doing lots of practice questions and past papers and things were the most effective form of revision for myself. But I know that there are lots of different techniques out there. So really try and get the hang of some, you know, some of your study skills, because that's something that's going to equip you and you'll need throughout medical school too. So make sure that you do get the grades in the first instance, and then that does make things a lot easier. However, if you are worried about your grades, first of all, let me reassure you that in the majority of cases, students do get what they're expecting. However, sometimes, you know, they can take you by surprise even. Some people have mitigating circumstances, so they're sort of a little bit more prepared for this scenario. But what I will say is that the students who are not too overconfident and the students who are extremely prepared for every eventuality are the ones that succeed. And I would actually argue that, you know, no matter how confident you are about getting the grades that you're expecting, it does not hurt to be prepared in this way and to know about all of the options available to you, because a significant minority of new medical students are actually reapplicants these days. You know, this is not something that will hinder you in any way once you become a medical student or even a doctor. Again, I can talk from personal experience because I went on to become a scholar at the university where I studied, which is Leeds, and I won a very competitive scholarship to do that. And I had my first choice of jobs as well, even when I graduated. So being a reapplicant doesn't hinder you at all. And in fact, in my case, I personally felt that it actually made me a stronger student, because by the time I did get into medical school, I really valued it so much more than I would have done if I'd got straight in. And as a result of that, I took advantage of every single opportunity that came my way, which I think is a fantastic practice to get into from the very beginning, and you will do well if you do that. So what I would, so first of all, obviously, you know, from a GCSE point of view, the sciences are really the most important, or what universities might consider to be core subjects. So that's English, the sciences, and maths. Most universities ask for A's and A stars. Some of you might be worried that you're going to drop a grade, maybe get a B or a C in one of the core subjects. But first of all, there are universities that will accept those grades. And there are not many of them, but there are a few. And remember, you can only apply to 4 anyway. And there are also universities that will look at GCSE resits. Not many. So, you know, you don't want to put yourself in that situation, but there are a few. If you want to go into detail about which universities these are, I'm afraid I can't reel them off memory, but they are all detailed in a book called The Medical Schools Compendium, which Medic Mentor produces. And I can mention that a little bit later. So, you know, if you're worried about your GCSE results, it's not the end of the world. There is an option to resit them, and there are still universities that might consider that. Or you might decide to go down the reapplication route from the outset. So either of those options will eventually get you where you want to be, which is a doctor. Once you get into year 12, obviously you do your work experience and you try your best to boost your CV, but you then get your AS results in the summer, or, you know, those of you who are doing linear, you might not get any results at all, but at least you'll get some mock results in the summer, which are really important actually, because that's what your predicted grades are based on. So as a result of that, you might find yourself at the reapplication stage a lot earlier. And indeed, we did have some students this year who fell into that category. But I'm really pleased to say that they've actually done quite well, and they have got offers too, especially the ones who engage with us and ask us lots of questions and keep coming back to us. We are here through, the phone, via email, at all of our events, through the school societies, if you do need advice at any stage. But from sort of year 12 onwards, you might be thinking, well, what are my options if I don't get my AS grades? Well, there are a few. Instead of going through the UCAS route, for example, there is another application process for the Republic of Ireland called the Central Applications Office, which you can take a look at. There, you might want to consider things like applying to a private medical school, which only a few people might be in a position to actually do that because they can be incredibly expensive. However, well, just out of curiosity, who thinks that private medical schools are undersubscribed or oversubscribed? And if I give you the University of Buckingham as an example, where they charge £35,000 a year, what do people think? Let's have a look at the chat. £35,000 a year, what do people think? Let's have a look at the chat. Not a lot of brave responses there, but thanks, Jess, for your suggestion. £35,000 is a lot of money, but I don't think that they have any issues filling their not a lot of brave responses there. A lot, having to fill their places. They are actually oversubscribed, and they do have a waiting list as well. So it's not something that deters people. So if you are in a situation like that, private medical school might be the way to go. There are also something called access and foundation courses. Now, access courses are basically university courses, or even ones that might be run by a local college near you, which allow you to transfer onto a medical degree partway through. That's actually one of the ways that I got onto my medical degree, because I didn't get the grades and I applied to an access course called Clinical Sciences at Bradford University. Now the thing about access courses is that they're actually competitive. So even though it's not a guaranteed route into medicine, unlike some foundation courses. So you have to competitively apply either after the first or second year, which might then allow you to go on to the second year or third year of a medical degree. So in my instance, I applied after my first year of clinical sciences, and I transferred on to the second year of the medical course at Leeds University. And there were 20 places for students, ring-fenced places for students from my course to do that. And there were about 100 students on that course, all wanting to apply. So the competition was still about 1 in 5. However, when you consider it to the regular UCAS process, which is on average about 1 in 10, the odds are still better. So that might be a good alternative for some of you, especially if you're someone who isn't very keen on taking a gap year. You might instead choose to start, do an access course for a year and then reapply that way. Foundation courses, on the other hand, are like a year zero. Some of them are actually paired with a medical course. So as long as you meet as long as you score over a certain grade and pass your exams at the end of the year, you're guaranteed onto the medical degree. So if you get onto a foundation course, well done, because essentially you will be going on to study medicine as long as you make those grades at the end of the year. And they tend to just be like a standard pass rate of about 70% or more. So they do expect you to pass the exams, but then you are guaranteed a place on that medical course at the institution where you've applied. So that's an alternative option, and that's something that you should be thinking for your 5th choice on your UCAS form. There is If you know that doesn't work out either, you could also consider applying as a postgrad. So, for example, if you start an access course and you don't actually transfer onto a medical degree after applying for it, you can continue to finish that degree. So, for example, if I didn't get onto the Leeds medical program after my first year at clinical sciences, I could have carried on and finished my clinical sciences BSc and then applied as a postgraduate, which I know a lot of students did from my cohort who didn't get in. And I actually have quite a few friends who did complete the degree and then went on to do postgraduate medicine at various different institutions like Newcastle, Cardiff, places like that. So the postgrad option is also there. Now, some students start looking overseas, particularly, you know, when you're sort of not getting any interviews or not having any offers, you start to look abroad. Now, this is something that can be a bit tricky because you have to be careful and a bit wary of a few things. First of all, make sure that the university that you're applying to allows you to come back to the UK or has some sort of partnership with the foundation program over here. Otherwise, you might end up sitting an exam called the PLAB exam before you can actually start practicing. There is a degree of favoritism as well. So when you do apply for jobs post qualifying, they tend to favour the UK graduates before looking at applications from foreign students. But there are some medical schools, particularly within the EU and the Czech Republic, Charles University is one of them, who have a partnership with the foundation program. So they are considered to be on the same sort of level as a UK graduate. So if you are thinking about going abroad, be sure to look at one of those. And the other interesting thing is that now that university fees have gone up in the UK, and students are paying over £9,000 a year, sometimes the tuition fees are actually cheaper. At universities abroad, they might be between £6,000 or £7,000 a year. Unfortunately, you won't be able to get a student loan for that, but then you would be paying less overall for your degree, unless you're from Scotland and you manage to get your fees completely paid for by the government, which you know, is fantastic, but unfortunately not something that's available to everybody at the moment. So that's another option, and I would really recommend looking at an organisation called Medical Doorways. They are like they're a really interesting group who can give you a lot of advice on the different universities that you can apply to abroad, and sometimes you actually have to sit an exam to go to apply to one of those universities, but they enable you to sit those exams in the UK. So it might be an organisation that you want to look at once you've got your grades. There's also the option of taking a gap year. It's something that's I think becoming more and more acceptable amongst applying students. Obviously, gap year and deferred entry is a long-standing thing, and something that universities and medical schools are used to. I think the common question is often, do universities prefer students to go straight in without taking a gap year? And unfortunately, it's very difficult to say that because each institution is different. But but generally speaking, they're not really supposed to, they're not really supposed to favour students who go straight into their courses. But actually, in some cases, taking a gap year is a fantastic idea, whether you get the grades or you don't get the grades. It gives you another year to get a lot of experience and really develop your own skills. I mean, medicine is a very challenging degree, and it helps to have that extra experience, I think. And I certainly benefited from that, I think, having an extra year before I actually started my medical degree. So a gap year might be a good option, especially if you're thinking of maybe resitting your exams. If you don't get the grades, you might want to take a gap year and resit and then reapply. Some people actually do really well with their UCAS applications and they get right up to the point of interview and then they trip up at the interview stage. And in those situations, they might want to take a gap year and reapply rather than starting another degree, which they then have to finish and then apply as a postgraduate, because obviously that's a lot more expensive. It's a much longer route. It's also very competitive as a, you know, when you apply as a graduate. So instead of doing that, a lot of students are now thinking of taking a gap year and then just focusing on and then reapplying after that. It's particularly good if you have managed to get the grades, because then you'll be given unconditional offers, because you've already got your A-level grades. So you look like a very good candidate. But if you haven't got the grades and your school allows you to resit your exams, then that might be another good option for you. So once you're in year 13, really you've got to start thinking about stepping up your CV. And you've got to use your year 13. You almost have to work a little bit harder than someone who's not got the grades at AS, because you've got to get more work experience. You've got to try and get more volunteering, apply for competitions, get some leadership and teamwork experience, try and do some research and teaching. And actually, we have a fantastic program that has been designed by our Director of Education, Dr. Yates, called the Gap 10 program. Now, we do try to help students as much as possible with all these areas. So if you have a look at the checklist, I've just made a few notes there for you. Volunteering, I mean, we've got mini mentor positions where you can help actually run insight conferences, and these are great for your CV and CVs, and fantastic to talk about personal statements. I mean, very few students would actually be able to say, I led and helped to coordinate a national medical conference at your level. So, if that's something that you're interested in doing, that opportunity is available through Medic Mentor. We also have a variety of competitions throughout the year, but I mean, this could be anything from like Biology Olympiad to some essay prizes maybe that you could apply to. And really, winning competitions and prizes it just demonstrates excellence in a certain area. So it looks quite attractive, and something that medical students also try to do. In terms of leadership, you need to be able to demonstrate that you've got some experience or had some leadership roles. Again, we've got a school society leadership program, so you could apply to become a school society leader. Again, the application and all the information is available on the website about that. And in terms of teamwork, well, you can, there are obvious links between, running the conferences as a mini mentor and actually being part of a school society and getting involved in your school society debates or fundraising or activities like that. Research experience, this is really kind of like the icing on the cake. They don't expect all students to have this, but considering that research is such an important part of medicine, this is a great thing to have. And you could do that either by writing articles for the Medic Mentor magazine. You might have a chance to get involved in a bit of research during your work experience, or you could even get in touch with us and help one of our medical student scholars, Funto, develop her work experience database, which is a database of contacts for work experience for you guys. So all of those things are, various different ways that you can get involved in research and develop a bit of research experience, or rather awareness of research, which is what they're really looking for at your level. And teaching and mentoring obviously is very important in medicine, and we do have opportunities for some of our mentors to actually give oral presentations at the Insight conferences, which is fantastic. And the Gap 10 program, especially if you are thinking about taking a gap year, is brilliant, because you do get that extra level of mentoring from Dr. Yates, as well as the opportunity to actually work on an educational project. And applications for that are open now and available through the website. We've only got 5 Gap 10 places this year, so I would really, really recommend getting involved in that and applying for a position, especially if you think take a gap year or you're sure that you're going to do that. The deadline is a week after A-level results comes out, so you should know by the time you apply whether you'll actually be taking a gap year or not. And obviously in year 13, if you need to resit some exams, then you might want to do so. So that basically takes you through to the end of year 13, and when you're sort of waiting for your A-level or higher results to come out. So at that stage, I mean, if you haven't already heard from interviews or had any offers, you'll want to consider applying through something called UCAS Extra. And that's basically, it's you do it through UCAS online, but it only allows you to apply to one course at a time. So the really key point there is that you make sure that you're happy with the course that you are applying to before you actually apply, because you won't actually be able to apply another one until that application is ended. So, you know, and make sure that the courses you are applying to are courses that will get you into, you know, that potentially increase your chances of getting into medicine, like an access course or a foundation course. And if that doesn't work, once you've got your results at the year 13 or your advanced hires, and you weren't expecting the grades that you actually got, then that's when you sort of make a final decision about going down one of these routes, either taking a gap year, applying through clearing, maybe taking up a private course, or going overseas, or applying off UCAS to some medical courses. I mean, that's sort of like when you have to make a final decision. But actually, all of this preparation that you do beforehand will make life a lot easier for you, because if you're only starting to think about it at that point after you've got your results, you're already behind everyone else. So actually, I would argue that no matter how confident you are, I mean, you just never know. You might not, you might not get the UK CAT score that you were expecting. You might just have had a really bad day on one of the exams, or you might have been feeling unwell. You know, so it's always really important to know what all the other options are that are open to you, and all the other support that you've got to hand. And in terms of actually approaching clear itself, I would first make sure that you've got some interview clothes ready, just in case you have to go to an interview, you know, on the same day, which I did. I actually had to I rang up St. George's and went to a biomedical sciences interview on the same day that I got my results. The thing about clearing is the rules, there are no rules almost. So universities can kind of do what they want at that stage. There's just a massive rush to fill whatever spaces are left. It's very unlikely that there will be any medical school places through clearing. Last year there were from St. George's, but I don't think that there will be again this year. So it's very unlikely to get a place through clearing, but it's still something that needs exploring, because obviously that is a preferred route. If you're an international student, there usually are some places at various institutions that are still available, or specifically for international students. You know, the best way to approach clearing is really to be prepared. So make sure that you've charged your phone, you've got full battery when you go to pick up your results tomorrow. Go and get them as early as you can. You know, if you've got a parent or someone with you who can be ringing up universities whilst you're trying to get through, because trust me, it's going to be very difficult to get through to an admissions tutor on the day. You know, so you have to kind of be ready with all of the telephone numbers and ring the 4 universities that you've already applied to first, because they're the most likely to talk to you, because they know that you wanted to go there. And then if they haven't, and if they say no, then you can start working down your list and look at other courses or other medical schools. And if that doesn't work, I would have a list of access and foundation courses, or you know, that you've already spoken to, that you know are going to have places available, and ring them up and see if they can actually interview you as soon as possible. Because when I applied for clinical sciences, I spoke to them on the phone, and then they told me that I could have an interview in 3 days, and I told them, well, actually I'm on the way now. So I got into the car with my dad, I drove right up there, and they interviewed me because there was a spare slot and I was there, and they offered me a place on the spot straight after my interview. And basically by the end of the day, all the places were gone. So everyone who they'd lined up for interview in the next 2-3 days, they just cancelled them all, or there were no places for them. So it's really time critical on clearing day, and it's really important to have this list prepared. And also have your portfolio at the ready, so that you can just literally just pick it up and go. It's not fun having to, you know, find your certificates and do all of that at that time, when you really ought to be, like, you know, super organized and just have this all, you know, ready and to hand. You don't want to be wasting time doing these things, looking up numbers and things like that, and having these conversations for the first time. Similarly, if you know that you've got mitigating circumstances, make sure that you've got all of your evidence, reference letters from your teachers or exam boards or whatever to hand, so that you can email all of that evidence straight over to the medical school if you need to. So I think that is pretty much everything, like a quick overview of the reapplication process. But to be honest, there's so much more detailed information on this subject, which is why Medic Mentor are organising a reapplication conference on the 10th of September. So if, you know, this is something that you are a little bit worried about, I'd really recommend you coming along to that, because there'll be a few organisations there who be able to help you. You can talk to some courses, and you can also talk to some students who have gone through this process successfully, and even some medical students who've applied sort of 4 or 5 times, and what they would have preferred, or what they wish they'd known, in fact. And really, I think the key to being successful through all this is actually being as prepared as possible, and not being too overconfident, and just having a plan and knowing what all of the options are, because knowledge is key in these sorts of situations. And when you are sort of reapplying and it's really coming to crunch time, because, you know, by that point, if you're a reapplicant, everyone else is sort of a little bit ahead of you. You've got to step it up and just work really, really hard, and, you know, do as much as you possibly can to boost your CV, as well as get the grades, and think about your next steps. That's what I would recommend. But obviously, try not to get into that situation in the first place. Do everything that you possibly can. Study really, really hard for your UK CAT this summer. Try and finish your personal statements early. I think there still are some places on the non-residential summer school this year. If anybody still wants to come along, you can have a look at that. I just really wish everybody good luck. And I'm going to take some questions now. Let's have a look. I'm going to start from the bottom and then work my way up the chat. Now, I know that Dr. Yates has already answered quite a few of those. How do you prepare yourself for UK CAT and BMAT? That's a very common question. 3 things, I think. Get yourself access to as many questions as you possibly can. You can do that, well, especially for UK CAT, because it's an online exam. I would subscribe to some online question banks. My favourites are the 6med one, because I think they're the most realistic to the actual UK CAT exam, and actually it's free to access their questions. You just got to pay the subscription to if you want the solutions. But there's also Medify, which a lot of other students use. So get yourself access to as many questions as you can. There are books maybe that you could get from students in the year above, if you can ask to borrow those. And then obviously there are courses and things available as well. And particularly if you're in a situation where you're trying these practice questions or these books and you're not really getting much better, the next obvious step would be to actually get some teaching on the subjects. So, you know, you could attend a course, or you could even ask a school teacher to maybe run something for you and do some practice with you, or maybe a successful year 13 applicant, if anyone's there willing to share some experience with yourself. But I do know that Medic Mentor or run UKCAT and BMAT teaching as part of the summer school. And there are still some places available on the non-residential one in mid-August. But try and give yourself about 6 weeks to prepare. And to be honest, if you've got an online question bank, you do loads of questions, and you've had teaching, and you give yourself 6 weeks to study, there is really not much more that you can do. You know, that's really giving you the best preparation that you can have, really. Mahruna Fazal, you didn't study in this country. You did 5 subjects. I don't think that, you know, I think you're really going to struggle because in this, most medical schools want a minimum number of subjects and grades for GCSE. So you may well, if you're serious about coming to the UK to study, you're probably better off doing some more qualifications before applying. Yes, there will absolutely be another application opportunity for the school societies, Asha. If you missed out, get an application in anyway. I wouldn't even wait for the deadlines. I would just get one in, you know, when you can, because the school society program is immense and it gives you support throughout your application, and it's brilliant, and it's fantastic to put on your CV as well as talk about in your personal statement, because at the end of the day, medical students, you know, they set up societies and get involved in medsocs and things at university, and by becoming a school society leader, you're showing that you're already doing that, as in you're already going to be a really good medical student. So you know, those sorts of things look brilliant. If the university doesn't specify National 5 or GCSE results, does that mean that they aren't bothered about the results? No, I don't think so, because actually GCSE results are becoming more and more important, especially now that A levels are going linear. So National 5s are quite important. In fact, be really, you know, places like Edinburgh University are very, very strict on National 5s, and they changed their National 5 requirements very close to the deadline last year, which I caught out some people. So, you know, GCSE and National 5 results are looked at by universities, definitely, and they're important because if you don't have AS grades, the only real, you know, grades which the universities know that you have for sure are your GCSE and National 5 grades, because the rest are just predicted. So I think that they are actually becoming increasingly important for that reason. I'm just looking back at some of these questions. Looks like Dr. Yates has actually answered a lot of these. Okay, brilliant. I'm just going back to the bottom now. How many hours of UKCAT practice should you do every day? Wow. It really depends, Fatima. That's a very difficult question to answer, because, you know, some students are very effective at revising and some students get very distracted. I think I fall somewhere in the middle. Think of it as if you are studying for your A-levels. How much revision did you do for your actual end of year exams? Because in reality, the UKCAT is weighted very heavily, and in some cases it's actually weighted more than your entry requirements, which is bizarre. But, you know, there are some universities where the UKCAT is 70% of an application. In the majority of cases, it is at least a third. So think of it as if you would, you know, as if it was like studying for one of your A-level exams, and give it that level of attention. Do you apply for deferred entry? You can if you want to. It's universities are not allowed to hold that against you when you apply. You know, I would definitely put that down at the outset, because what's worse is if you actually get an offer and then decline it. So if a gap year is something that you're seriously thinking about, then I would put that on your application from the beginning. but it shouldn't, in theory, affect your chances of getting an offer. So what would you do in a gap year? Well, a lot of things, because if you are going to take a gap year and reapply, the biggest question that universities will have for you is, what did you do in your gap year? And they want to make sure that you weren't just wasting your time. So definitely do a lot more work experience. And a part-time job is always a great thing. It demonstrates a variety of really good transferable skills. So yeah, and some people like to go traveling and things, so that might be another option. Am I back now, Dr. Yates? Can someone on the chat just let me know that you can see me again? Fantastic. Okay, thanks. Okay, so I've had a couple more questions. Work experience in one place is actually really good. I mean, I think, Chloe, it's both, because if you have a variety of work experience, it just shows that, I mean, you will develop a breadth of knowledge. You'll develop a really good understanding of work experience in the community as well as in secondary care. You'll have a lot more to talk about at your interview and in your personal statement. However, commitment is also really important, and there's something called and there's something where universities look for work experience which is done over a longer period of time, of around sort of 6 weeks to even months. So I think that actually doing both is the best scenario, but sometimes that's not always possible. But try to be persistent with getting work experience, and I think aiming for both is the best thing to do. If you don't score well in your UK CAT, there's 2 options. One, you could sit the BMAT, which I know might not be very popular, or you can apply to some universities which weight the UK CAT less than others. But ultimately, your UK CAT score will affect your application, so be very wary of that. You want to score somewhere between sort of 650 to 700 on average to be seen as a competitive applicant. I mean, the closer to 700 that you can score, the more of a strong applicant you'll be. So that hopefully that's answered your question. Right. Volunteering can take place anywhere. I mean, you could volunteer as part of the hospital even. I mean, every hospital has a volunteering department, and sometimes you can actually get better patient contact through the volunteering department than you could through the work experience department, especially if they have like a befriending service where you can actually go in and speak to patients. There are lots of different places where you can volunteer, not just in the community. Care homes, residential homes are great, but you can also do some fundraising, and you can certainly volunteer through Medic Mentor, as I mentioned earlier, as a mini mentor, actually helping to run conferences. Should you retake your English? Maria, well, that comes down to you and whether you actually want to apply to the universities that will accept resits for GCSEs. Your C in English will probably limit you to some extent, but you've got to balance that against how many universities will accept resits and whether you actually want to go to one of those unis. And again, I would really reference the MSc here, that's the Medical Schools Compendium, because in that it's got tables of which universities will accept resits, which universities will accept lower entry requirements, that sort of thing. So, and really, you know, that depends on whether you actually want to study there in the first place. So I'd really consider that before you decide to retake anything. Hi, by the way, Maria. I've spoken to you on the phone several times, but it's nice to see you on the chat. So thanks for your question as well. Hi guys, sorry. I think my internet connection dropped out again, but I was just in the middle of answering Michael's question about hospital placements. It is not vital. It's really difficult to get hospital work experience. Brilliant if you can. Sometimes you actually have to go to like a neighboring county, especially if you've missed the application deadline or you know, they've got a really, really long waiting list. But basically it's not essential. You can also get work experience in the GP through nursing home, residential homes, working in a school with children with maybe special needs. You could also get work experience abroad, but you know, there's so many different options. I would use a strategic approach when you try to organize work experience, and just kind of make a list of who to contact. And you know, if you can send out, as it's almost like a numbers game as well. You know, the more applications you send out, the more likely you are to get somewhere to work. You're welcome. So if anybody's got some specific questions about their subjects, the best and easiest thing to do is actually to give us a call on the mental helpline number. We'll be more than happy to speak to you. But to be honest with you, I really recommend you guys come along to the conference on the 10th, because that is so comprehensive. You'll get to see us one-to-one, and we'll actually have a proper chance to sit down and talk to you as well, if you are, you know, about your personal circumstances. There really is just too much sometimes to just explain to you in one conference, or even you know, over the webinar here. So you know, come along to that conference and make sure that you get absolutely everything that you need and all the information that you need. And it doesn't matter if you're a GCSE student, year 12 student, or year 13 student. It's never too late to come to a conference like that, especially if you are especially if you see yourself heading down the reapplication route. The best thing that you can do is just get as much advice as you possibly can and as much information as you can. The conference, Asha, is called the Reapplication Conference, and it's on the 10th of September, and all the details are on the website. You can register onto it now. it's the only conference that happens, it's the only reapplication conference that happens throughout the year, Brinda. But to be honest with you, if I would just come to it anyway. If it was me, you never know what's going to happen. Thinking back now, I was actually not, I wasn't expecting the grades that I got. I was predicted A's, but I probably should have gone to that conference. It's just good preparation, because by the time you're in that scenario, you already waste a lot of time trying to learn all of this stuff. So it's just really, really good to be prepared. Asha, if you're in year 10, you're probably a little bit too young, because you've still got your GCSE grades next year to sit. So I'd probably think about coming along next year at the very earliest, okay? Alex, for your fifth UCAS option, do you have to write another personal statement? No, you can only submit one personal statement for UCAS. So if you end up putting something like law down and writing a medical personal statement, that's not really going to fly. But if you do put something like biomedicine or something similar down, then that's fine. In terms of psychology, you've got to be careful, because it depends which exam board you're sitting. I think in a lot of cases, psychology is not a Russell Group subject. So some universities, particularly Russell Group universities, don't actually accept psychology as a subject and look at it in the same way they would like general studies or something like that. So one, check with your teachers to see whether it's a Russell Group subject, and two, check with the universities that you want to apply to see whether they'll actually accept it as a grade. Otherwise, you could get yourself into a bit of a sticky situation and lose a place unnecessarily. I still have 7 minutes left if you want to throw some questions at me, either about reapplying or just anything generally. Okay, guys. Oh, no, there is actually... If you have taken psychology as an A-level, will you be disadvantaged? I think I've just answered that question, Fatima. You won't be disadvantaged as such, as long as the universities you apply to accept it as a grade, accept it as a subject. If you apply to unis that don't accept it as a subject, you won't even meet the minimum entry requirements to even be considered for selection. So that's the only way that that is how you could be seen to be disadvantaged, but actually you don't qualify to even apply. So it's not really being disadvantaged, you just don't qualify to apply. So be very careful when you select your A-level choices. How many GCSEs are you expected to take? I think the majority of students take 8 as a minimum, but that can go all the way up to 14. I think on average most students tend to take like 10. Is work experience and volunteering seen just as importantly as your grades? Your grades are like the minimum entry requirements, that you need to get those just to be viewed as an applicant. So that's like the baseline. Things like work experience and volunteering are essential to help you get an insight into the career. Without that, really, you're going to struggle to demonstrate that you've got that insight. So that it's not like one's more important than the other. They're both very important. Maya, I think maybe you should give us a ring on the helpline number when you're free, possibly over the weekend. Okie dokes, guys. So my time is nearly up. Just to recap everything that I've said to you then. Think about reapplication early on. Don't leave it to the last minute. There's loads of things, loads of other options available to you, and actually being aware of them will put you at a distinct advantage, and being organized about all the different options is really important. So download the reapplication checklist and have a look through that as a reminder. Stay involved in Medic Mentor and try and get involved in as many things as you possibly can. The more stuff you get involved in, the more likely you are to succeed. At the moment, Gap 10 applications are open. You can also apply for things like the School Society applications over the summer. Come along to all the conferences and the events and meet us on a regular basis. Talk to us regularly. Let us know what you're up to. Contact George, the editor of the magazine, and write an article for the next issue. Get involved in some research with Funto, helping her to complete her work experience database, and just stay in touch and come along to loads of events and just really stay in the loop with everything, and keep an eye on your emails, because I will keep you updated regularly, and you can come and hang out with us at least every week. So there'll be another talk next week as well, and an email will go out about that too. But in the meantime, to the conference on the 10th of September, it'll be lovely to see you all there. And if you do need anything, just give us a call. And Michael, it's great to see that you're going to be at the summer school. It's not vital, but again, if you want to come, definitely think about it. It's important never to be overconfident. You're very welcome, everybody. It was lovely speaking to you all. Have a lovely evening. Take care. Bye-bye.